You mentioned the World War II mobilization that Seth
Mhm.
Klein writes about. There's so many historical precedents that get mentioned in terms of what we need to do.
Mhm.
So the Marshall Plan, some people call for a Manhattan Project, a New Deal, of course, with the Green New Deal. Also, there's other precedents of smoking. I've heard you talking about the fact
Yeah.
that you quit smoking because you became a social pariah, and that was a pretty major lift for with the smoking companies, and also healthcare in Canada. And bringing in healthcare into Saskatchewan and into the country was not easy. So, what do you draw from those? Are you most attracted to the New Deal, or what elements from history will help us make the changes we need to make right now?
I've always sort of shied away a little bit from the Second World War analogy because I don't like the idea of a war, thinking about it as a war, and because I think there's a sort of a danger where we sort of pit ourselves against the natural world even more than we do now. Um, Climate is not our enemy. Climate change is our enemy. Fossil fuels are that are at this point our enemy. But I'm just not sure that enemy discourse is all that helpful. I think I'm more comfortable sort of seeing like greed as our enemy, and like I guess coming back to what I was saying earlier, I mean, I think we really need a different worldview that recognizes interdependence, and I worry about where some of the militaristic rhetoric gets us, which is why I prefer the New Deal era, which I think we just have a lot in common with, in the sense of you have an a profound economic crisis, obviously the Great Depression. You also have rising fascism. You also have an ecological crisis in the U.S. with the Dust Bowl, also in parts of Canada, and this need to solve multiple problems at once. And so so many, I think, New Deal programs would be so welcome in a moment like this, like the Civilian Conservation Corps, which planted more than 2 billion trees and built hundreds of state parks. If we did something like that in Canada, and it's something that Justin Trudeau has talked about, I would think that it would need to be led by First Nations. It would need to be married to the land back movement, rather than it just being, planting a whole bunch of tree farms on Indigenous land. That's green colonialism. That's not what we need. Um, but I think that thinking about the role of rewilding the world and sequestering carbon is absolutely key. Um, Another part of the New Deal that I find really important right now is the National Youth Administration, which created millions of jobs specifically for young people. The CCC also created jobs specifically for young people. But when I think about, the young people who are listening to us, university age young people and younger, I just don't think we're offering nearly enough to them right now, to what it means to be preparing for a future in so many different forms of crisis. Obviously, we're talking about the climate crisis, um, but the economic crisis that they are graduating into, and also I think the psychological crisis that predates COVID, but has been greatly intensified by it. That there is a profound mental health crisis. It's not only for young people, but it is more intense for young people. And one of the things that um, I'm always struck by when I look at New Deal history is that when leaders in that era talked about the Great Depression, they weren't only talking about it as an economic state. When we talk about the Great Depression, we're talking about economic indicators. Um, but when they talked about the Great Depression, they were talking about the psychological state of the people as well as the economy. And so when you had these programs that invested in people's right to access nature, or their right to dignified work, or their right to participate in the arts, there was huge funding for the arts under the New Deal. It was about not just creating economic stimulation, it was also about addressing people's spiritual and psychological needs, including the need for a shared mission and a shared project. And I think we really need that right now. And I think young people deserve it. And we need to think at that kind of scale. How do we solve multiple problems at once? Create jobs and battle climate change, and get people in community and in common purpose, and maybe away from screens, because it's not doing any of us any good to be on screens this much.